every single empowered CMO, we've talked about being a category designer. And I met this lady, April Dunford, and she has a book called Obviously Awesome. And we've got the book for you, it's out there. And she has sort of an interesting point of view on category design versus positioning. And so I thought, well, how interesting to have one of our hardcore category designers, who's an amazing category designer, share best practices around that, but also have someone talk about positioning and compare and contrast. And so the fabulous Sydney Sloan, who is both an expert positioner and category designer, is going to moderate. And I know we're going to learn a lot. So let's get up here, ladies. Show us what's what.
We're going to make it on the stage without tripping because I was also watching her go back and forth and I was like, ah! So thank you for doing that. Good morning. I'm Sydney Sloan. I'm the CMO at SalesLoft. And it is my pleasure to be here and with everybody online today. So about a week ago, I was heads down in the middle of a massive rebrand. And Latney called and was like, hey, Sid. I'm like, hey, Lat, what's up? She's like, how'd you like to do a panel? I'm like, sure. I said yes before I even know what the panel was about because I just, everybody wants to be in Latney's world. So I'm like, I'm in. And I was like, she's like, don't you want to know what the panel's about? And I'm like, oh, okay, sure. Yes, I would love to know what the panel is about. And when she told me it was April and Maria, I was like, holy moly, like, of course. And what an honor. So we're going to talk about I think of when you think of CMOs, we're also storytellers. We're all those things. We're markets, we're research and insights, but we also have to be fantastic storytellers. And in order to tell a great story, you have to have a point of view and a position that is strong and foundational that everybody can come back to. So we're going to talk about the intersection of positioning and brand and categories, all things we love. But first, let me do introductions. So April got a little bit, but April, why don't you add to that? And if you could add in, what is your superpower that people may not know?
Boy, let me think about that. I don't know if I got any superpowers. Yesterday, my superpower was spending 9 hours in the Denver airport.
Making it across the border.
Yeah, making it across the border. So my background is I ran marketing. I've been a head of marketing, a head of sales, and a COO, which is what they call you when they can't figure it out. But at a series of successful tech companies, so I think I did 7 startups. 6 of those were acquired. So through acquisition, I ran marketing at a bunch of big companies. And then for the past 5, 6 years, I've been a consultant and I work with tech companies. I'm very specifically focused on positioning. I only do B2B and I only do tech.
And then when I think of this lovely lady, I go, Cher Madonna Maria. She only needs one name. I swear to God, I refer to her as Maria. So Maria, we know from Marketo and Aptus and now at Active Campaign, her specialization in taking a company from 100 million to IPO, a great place to be. So Maria, maybe add to that. And what is the superpower you have that we may not know?
Yeah, it's funny. Did you notice nobody said my last name? I'm the only Maria Pergolino in the world, and it's not like that. It's spelled as it reads, but everybody avoids saying it because they're scared they're going to get it wrong. So hi, it is so nice to see everybody in person.
Yeah.
This is amazing, right? Like this is just it's like almost makes me want to cry. I'm a passionate marketer, as you mentioned, Marketo, Aptus, Anaplan. I brought out to the public market, and then now Active Campaign. My superpower, I have some travel related ones. I pick some good flights. I'm very picky about my airports. I also spend probably more time outside of marketing and the marketing team than inside, and I think that's important in being a great marketer. And so I also I know we talked a lot about market and being that chief market officer, but I think I think about strategy and how are you guiding the over. I think marketing's the front of the ship. I think it's the strategy of the company. So some secret powers there that I call marketing.
Awesome. So we'll a little bit of a foundational question. April, I'm going to address this one to you.
Sure.
We're talking about category creation and positioning. Are they the same or are they different?
So, in my opinion, market category is a piece of positioning. So, if we think about positioning, there's a lot of components to that. So, it includes competitive alternatives, differentiated value, customer segmentation. Market category, you can think of it as like context setting. It's the context that we position our company or our offering in, such that our value makes a lot of sense to the target customers we're trying to go after. So, in my opinion, there's lots of different ways you can position a company or a product in a market. So, one of those ways is you take an existing market category and you position yourself as the leader in that category. The second way is I take an existing market category and I say I'm not going to dominate all of it. I'm just going to dominate a segment of it. Or I can say, you know what, none of these market categories work for me, so I'm going to create a whole new market category and position the company or the product there. So I see it as, category creation is one style of positioning, but there's other styles.
So, Maria, when you come into companies, you're obviously helping them with that next trajectory. Where do you put this in your priority list of the things you look to address coming in new as a CMO?
Yeah, I love that we kicked off the day talking about the market. And if you've had a conversation with me, I'm very passionate about like us as marketers and how we're successful within that position. And I think it starts with, even before you join a company, understanding that market, the TAM of that market, and knowing it is something you could market. I have watched a lot of great marketers take roles where there's no way I could do the job they were doing, like with the best marketing possible. The differentiation, the positioning can't get there. And so that's really hard. And so I think it starts even before you join with understanding what you think the market is. And I haven't taken an opportunity where I haven't talked to customers before taking that job and understood what they thought the differentiation points are. And then you can start weaving it into, I think, that positioning. I overlean and use category creation as I think more than you would, but and probably in some incorrect places to do some jujitsu in the market. I may be renaming a category that's the existing category just with a fancier name to pull some buzz, but I think it starts even before you walk in the door.
I'd agree with you. I remember when I was researching, I was talking to the analysts, like had Tracy Eiler actually introduced me to an analyst that was following the category that was going to be created. And so I had conversations with her and saying, is this a thing? When are you forecasting that this might be a category? Who are the players? What should I look for? And it was really helpful in decision making. So 100% agree with you on that.
The thing about a market category, like if you don't get the category stuff kind of straightened out before you start really doubling down on demand gen, it's going to be really hard, right? Because if you think about it, the market category in a lot of ways sets the expectations for customers around what you're all about. So if I walk up to you and I say, hey, I'm selling you this thing and it's CRM, everyone's going to go, okay, who's my competition? It's Salesforce. What features do you expect this product to have? Well, it's going to do tracking deals and tracking a pipeline and all this stuff. And who do I sell to? I sell to the head of sales. What does it cost? Well, I know Salesforce is leader in that market, so your price must be less than that. So if I start with that, but I've set off that set of assumptions, but if my product doesn't meet those assumptions, then the thing's going to look like a failure, even though the product is maybe just fine. Whereas if I came in and I said, oh, it's not CRM, it's team collaboration. Oh, well, that's something totally different. Well, now you compete with Slack, and I don't expect you to do this, that, and the other thing. So whenever I was new as a head of marketing, the first thing we do is kind of get straight on the positioning, because it's kind of hard to figure out how I'm going to do lead gen until I get that sorted out.
What happens when you're going in and actually expanding those? So let's say you are in a defined category. Maybe you're a leader in that category, but now your competitors have caught up. And we were talking earlier about kind of category. One is casting a vision, and the other is your ability to execute. So how do you recast a vision in a category to stay ahead?
So I have my own. I don't have an amazing book like April does, but I have a framework I use for category creation, and then what I think it is to be that leader in the category. I think to have category leadership, you need to have innovation, that people are buying the future, not what it is today. That was a big piece of Marketo when we brought it forward. There was a larger player in the space, Eloqua, and yeah, there's Jill. But we were presenting the future in a different way, and so that innovation, as well as the product, but painting that picture, I think it is. The points of customer success. To be the leader, people have to be able to see that somebody has done it before. I call it ecosystem, which people go to partners, but I also think it's community, what Latney talked about earlier, how you're bringing others, how people are talking about when you're not in the room, and that you are the conversation when people are talking about your space. And then I think it's trust, that it does not matter, just using an example outside of our space, but you know, I just can't imagine anybody would think Wells Fargo's the leader when they had broken the trust with their customers. And so to me, that's table stakes. You have to have that. And for me, those four things come together to create that market leader. So by breaking it into that framework, I can choose where I'm going to put my efforts to grow in each one of those, or emphasize maybe one over the other. And then, you know, continuing to define the category so that we're pushing that leadership forward and that innovation.
So April, you do have a framework, and if you've read her book or watched some of her talks, I will plead guilty. So she's like, "Have you ever filled out one of those positioning statement frameworks?" And yeah, we talked about pragmatic marketing. I think it's page 67 in the pragmatic marketing. It's like, I am in this blank category. Unlike others competitors, we are unique because, show of hands, how many have done that? Okay, so.
Me too.
We got it wrong.
Me too.
Explain to us your framework and why order matters.
Yeah. So here's the thing. When I did the first time I repositioned product, we were just kind of making it up. And so we had this thing, and we thought it was desktop productivity software. We repositioned it as an embeddable database for mobile devices. Pretty different. And so, how did we come to that? We kind of made it up. Like we did. NPS survey. We talked to a whole bunch of customers. We found out they weren't using the product the way we thought they were. We started to figure out what made us different and special. We kind of mumbled around until we got a category that we thought worked, and then we ran with it. So after that, I thought, man, I'm going to have to figure out how to do this properly, because I'm sure we didn't do this the way we're supposed to do this. And all I could find was this positioning statement, we are a blank for blank. And that didn't seem like a way to do it. Like, it might be a way to write it down, but when we take something like market category, almost any product could be positioned in multiple different market categories. So how do I pick the right one? So the way I looked at it was, I figured, I have a background in engineering, so I thought, I'm going to engineer this. So this is how we solve it in engineering. I'm going to break it in little pieces, solve for the component pieces, put them together, voila, good positioning. So break it into pieces is easy because we agree on what those are. And for the most part, they're the blanks in the positioning statement. It's competitive alternatives, unique capabilities, differentiated value, target customers. So who's my best fit customer? And the last one's market category. Well, when you look at that, all those things have a relationship to each other. I can't solve them independently. So if I say differentiated value, the value that I can deliver to customers, this differentiated, where does that come from? Well, it comes from differentiated capabilities. Kind of doesn't come from anywhere else, but my differentiated capabilities are only differentiated when I compare them to an alternative. So all those things I can't solve for one without the other. And then it's like, well, who's my best fit customer? Well, my best fit customers, by definition, those are the people that really care a lot about my differentiated value. That's what makes them a good fit for my stuff. And then market category is a little bit more theoretical, but your best market category is the context you position yourself in, such that your differentiated value makes a lot of sense to the people you're trying to go after. So we actually have to solve these things in a very specific order in order to make it clearly differentiated in the market. So the starting point of that is competitive alternatives. If you didn't exist, what would the customer be doing? And so that might be your direct competitors, but it might be, I'd use a spreadsheet, I'd hire an intern, I'd do nothing. And then it's like, well, what have I got that they don't have? I got lots of capabilities. I map that stuff to value. Now I've got differentiated value. If I look at that value and then I say, well, who cares a lot about that? What are the characteristics of a target account that make them care about that value? Then I got that. Now I can lean back and say, all right, I've got this differentiated value. I'm trying to communicate it to these people. Am I email or am I chat? And which one of those contexts actually highlights my differentiated value? So if I'm Active Campaign, for example, I might get to the end of that exercise and say, well, crap, all the stuff that makes us amazing and different isn't email. Like if I position myself in there, I'm really underselling what the thing does. So if I get to that point and I get down there, then I say, well, I don't want to use that category. That, like, I look like everybody else there, and all my jazzy stuff is outside of the category. So what I've actually got is some stuff from CRM and some stuff from marketing automation. And so what I'm really going to have to do, because there isn't a category for that exists, is make something up and then position it in there so that people can understand that as the starting point. If I get all the way down and I say, you know what, we're really just a data warehouse, but a data warehouse for the cloud, then I don't have to make up something new, because you know what? People, eventually all the data warehouses are going to be in the cloud. This is a great position to be in. I don't have to do anything tricky. So that's how it works in my own.
Thank you for using Active Campaign. We
I was gonna be like, what's the real story
well, so
now? Yeah.
I was gonna tie some of that together. So we do email marketing, marketing automation, and CRM. Very well said.
Yeah.
We bridge that together
It's clear
into
positioning. I got that off the website.
We bridge that, though. We call it customer experience automation, which is been customer experience is so popular right now. We have been able to tap into that, saying when you bridge these legacy categories together, you get a sum that's more than the parts, and that has played very well for us. We're faster growing right now than anybody in the space at a decent scale, and so that category has been critical for us because it's been our way of explaining that that sum is more than the parts. I don't think that's our only differentiation, though. So that category work has been amazing. It has taken control of some of the competitions, both roadmap and their messaging, because now they're chasing our messaging, which gives us time to explore other things. We have other differentiation, though. I like to take out the competitors, both from the top, like the mind game, but also take their legs out from them too. And we have really highlighted around the value that we can do it for, the success that we can cause, that's security. So all those things that will then make us the leader in the category that I talked about. We have brought forward this customer success commitment, this guarantee, but every point on it is a differentiator from our competitors. And so positioning also, or category creation, is, as I agree with you from the beginning, where it's one piece and you can leverage multiple of these things at once to really create a compelling message forward.
I love what she said. So we have this strategy that we talk about, which is the M&M strategy. And I don't know if you guys remember seeing 8 Mile, but he's coming up for the battle and he knows what the other guy's going to say. And so his whole rap is everything he knows what the other guy's going to say. And the guy's like standing there going, So what you just, you just totally pulled an M&M. That's exactly, my differentiation is all the things that my competitors do. We have a great question from Gretchen, which is very well formed. How do you handle situations when there isn't an existing category?
Yeah, so lots of times there isn't. So generally what we've got, if there isn't an existing category, the situation we're in is that the category is emerging, right? So, there's a need for a category of solutions like this yet, but it just hasn't formed yet. So customers, it isn't a category in the minds of customers yet. And so, and this is kind of where the strength, but also the risk in category creation comes in, because your job then is to evangelize the category. And so if the category doesn't exist already, it means people don't actually really understand the problem that you're trying to solve. So I got to kind of evangelize the problem. I've got to convince you that this category of solutions deserves to exist. And then I got to convince you that, once it does emerge, I'm the best choice in there. So the trick in this is to be forceful about it, to recognize that it's going to take some time to actually create this. So you need to be really consistent and patient. If you're a venture-backed startup, what that means is you need deep-pocketed, patient investors. If you don't have that, then I think category creation is a hard thing to do because, and the history of Silicon Valley teaches us that quite often the folks that spend 10 years creating a category get actually knocked out by a fast follower. This is why we don't use Ask Jeeves, we use Google. This is why we don't use MySpace, we use Facebook, is because these fast followers come along, they got brand new investors that are all patient, and the old guys that got, they're sitting in board meetings saying, TikTok, it's been 10 years, man, we're still not making any money here. If the category doesn't exist yet, you need to recognize that it's emerging. You've got to get out ahead of that, and then you also need to recognize at some point it will exist in the customer's mind, and then it's going to be a dogfight with a whole bunch of fast followers piling in afterwards trying to eat your lunch.
So, and I always love too when they're like, "Oh, just create a category," and you're like, "Yeah, that's
Yeah,
not."
like we just
It's not
like
so
we
easy.
just
Maybe
sit
not-
it, and then
maybe
it's
not
there.
the right, maybe not the right strategy. The other thing I was thinking about is how much money we would save by not paying the analysts. Damn it, Gartner, right? And yes,
It's
peer
so
reviews.
easy to
You can
dunk on
start-
Gartner in a room full of marketers.
Oh yeah, but you can start with. I love the peer review sites too. I mean, now we can start to form our own categories by just doing good by our users and having them advocate for us and the value that we bring to them, and then from there, categories can emerge. So when we're talking about categories, category sizing, kind of casting that vision, Maria, like we talked a little bit about. You have to have a vision story out there, what marketing's job is, but sales still has their positioning, selling what's on the truck, like how to balance between the story, the vision that you're casting, but the reality of what it is your sellers have to sell.
Yeah, I am. We just talked about product-led growth, but I really like sitting in the area of like marketing-led growth, right? And creating some of that vision that then product has that you're setting the vision that they're going to follow. And we talked about this a little bit beforehand as it relates from B2B and B2C. On the B2B side, you have runway, right? You can paint a vision and the product has time to catch up. I also love this for testing the market. We want to announce product and see what the reaction is. Even the category itself, see what the traction is, and feel like we're doing it ahead of time enough that we can make changes and we can, we're one of the values at Active Campaign that I love because I think it's been so close to me is iteration and being okay with that iteration, especially in your positioning. Like there is just no way the first time you're getting it right, it's going to evolve, and being okay with that evolution.
Also want to remind folks, questions from the audience. We grabbed one off of, but if anybody has questions, please raise your hand. We've got 5 minutes left. So, okay, someone is pointing. Jill, hold on. Whoa, we got to give you a mic. All right.
Jill Rowley. My question to Maria, when you talked about customer experience at Active Campaign, putting the pieces of what you guys do and do them differently together, did you have a new buyer?
No, I mean, again, email marketing, marketing automation, CRM, so first, all of us have these tools, but there is a lot of white space. There is a lot of people that have not purchased these solutions yet. Over half our business is outside of the United States. So considering international markets, I think one of the things that you learn the first week in your marketing class is when you go to college is like, you do not represent your buyer. But in tech, most of the time, the first buyers that we have are other technology companies. And I think that's super dangerous because you're not seeing the potential. So we have had a very viral motion. We're in 170 different countries. I couldn't market to that if I wanted to. So I think that, I can't remember what the question was, but that's
Who your
my
buyer
answer.
Oh, you
is.
see the buyer.
So
Who's
are
the
you
buyer?
still, who's your buyer? Is it marketing, sales? Is it who
Oh.
owns customer experience within an organization? So do you
It's-
have a new
it's
persona?
there- It's still not everybody, right? Every leader, right? And so we're bringing that vision across the board. It's a massive market, and so one thing that we have found success in, which is a little bit dangerous, is, and definitely not what I would recommend if you're a $5 million company, but we have delivered a platform that addresses lots of use cases in a lot of markets you go to our site and it's like, if you're B2B, go here, and if you're B2C, go here. I mean, that's everybody. Like we we go broad, and that has worked for this brand. I don't know that that's the right thing to do for every company, especially if you don't have some scale.
April, when you think about, you've clarified that positioning is not branding. That's one of your, to be clear. So how do you recommend marketers think about the relationship between branding and positioning?
Yeah, like in my opinion, the branding needs to represent the positioning, right? Like the positioning is kind of the nut. It's sort of the first principles stuff. Like I need to understand, you know, what do I got to beat in order to win a deal? What are my key differentiators? What value does that provide for my customers? Who are those customers I'm trying to go after? This is the market I intend to win. And then the brand needs to represent all that stuff. So I don't like it when people talk about brand positioning because I'm a bit like, so is it positioning or branding? Because those are actually different. In my opinion, positioning is an input to brand. Like we need to have the positioning figured out first, and then we're like, okay, how does the brand reflect this positioning or help us communicate that positioning out to the market? So I kind of see it, the relationship that way. But you know, we can define branding however we want, and we do. So that's part of the problem. Is you know, for like most marketing terms, we like to define them in lots of different ways. So I don't know that, but in my mind, the positioning drives the branding, not the other way around.
Any thoughts on that, Maria?
I mean, I appreciate that perspective. I think brand and positioning are different and should be thought about differently. I think one thing since there's one of the things that many of us here in the room have in common is that we may be a founder-led organization, or there's lots of different stakeholders in both the brand and the positioning. And so a big reminder is that even if you have it perfect, if you have not brought the company along with you, if you've not brought those investors along with you, it does not matter how right you are, how happy those customers are. And you have to have that alignment. I would argue that mediocre brand and mediocre positioning that is aligned within a company is going to get you farther than the
I agree
best
with that
the
so
best
much.
possible differentiation and positioning if everybody's going in different directions.
Yeah, I can't say this enough. Like so in the work I do now, when we're doing positioning stuff with a company, like we're bringing in a cross-functional team to work on that. So we want representation from product sales, customer success, and ideally, if it's a startup, we need the founders in there because if we can't get everybody aligned on this, then we're just sitting around talking stuff. But sales isn't going to sell it that way. The CEO is not going to pitch it that way when he's out with people. So we actually have to bring everybody together and then work on it together so that we get agreement and alignment. If we don't have that, then it's really hard to drive it home.
That's exactly what we just did in going through our rebranding it because we also had to tell a new story. So we had our CEO, heads of product,
Yeah.
marketing, some sales folks in there, even sales enablement, really crafting. So when it did come out, all of the pieces fit together. And of course, everybody has buy-in, right? Like at that point, then we all own it.
So,
Mike.
so my question is, how do you get it to be concise then? Because with all those inputs, you end up with, a book, a Bible, whatever. Um, my favorite positioning comes from Tableau. They all they say in their positioning is that they allow people to see and act on data. That's it. That's their whole positioning.
Beautiful.
And I keep trying to replicate that, and I keep getting caught with Bibles. So, what's your advice?
Well, so I will say that the danger of having the cross-functional team is you get all these people together in the room and then it's whoever's yelling the loudest is who we're listening to, or we get this kind of like design by committee thing, which help us all, right? So so this is actually the exact reason where I got so crazy about we need a methodology for positioning. If we don't have a methodology for positioning, then it's just a bunch of opinions, and marketing's opinion never wins. So so in so once I sort of decided like I could break things apart into pieces, then I could use that framework as a way to bring the team together and to a certain extent take the opinions out of it and say, well, look, here's what we got to beat in order to win a deal. This is what makes us really different. This is the value we can deliver for customers. These are the only people that care about that. Now let's talk about market category instead of just getting the room together and saying, why does everybody love our stuff, right? Which would just give you a bunch of garbage. So I think the key is it's cross-functional participation, but you don't want it to be the Wild West. You want to come in with a methodology and control the discussion and say, we're going to build one piece on the next to try and take the opinions out of it so that it isn't just your head of sales coming in and saying, it's the widgets, man. Everybody buys us for the widgets. And I know that because I'm the one selling the deals. Or your founder comes in and your founder hasn't sold the deal in 7 years and says, no, but I know 7 years ago I did that deal, remember? And it was because of this. Like, you want to be able to take that out of it, bring everybody together and move them along in a structure.
I'm sure that tableau, like we're all looking for that like perfect line. When you see it, you're like, yes, right? Like, but that if you've worked with me, you've probably heard me tell the story. But there's the story of like the Picasso bull, where like if you look at this picture of a bull that Picasso has done, it is like two lines. It's like the body with like some horns, and you look at it and you're like, oh yeah, that's a bull. But if you look back at his art, it starts over a decade of time with a like actual like very specific shaded beautiful picture of a bull, and it over this decade gets simplified and simplified and simplified. It did not happen at one time, and that's what makes it a masterpiece for us. And I think it is very similar with great positioning. We see that line, or we see motto, tagline, whatever it is, a personal brand statement, and we think, oh, I need that, and we sit in a room with a piece of paper and we try to come up with it. But it's never that case. It is something that takes time, and being okay with that iteration and time. And then, can I put on the moderator hat really fast?
Sure.
This question, before we move from it
Yeah, yeah.
around Rebred, this you just did this, so like, what's your answer there?
On this last question
Yeah.
here. So Jean just asked, can we share the methodology we use in a cross-functional meeting to gain alignment? Oh, I could do last. Yeah, the recasting the category or the brand. Oh, yeah. Well, I was selfishly asking, of course. No, on the brand versus positioning, and for us, it all went together, and so and recasting a category at the same time. I mean, we're trying to do it all. We're trying to leapfrog ahead of everybody. And so my first advice is it takes time. It took us 11 months. And so we're sitting there running, watching the market, knowing that our big thing was coming, but to make sure that we took the time and created the space to get it right. So it could be the big thing in the market that thank God it was. But it's the product positioning and the promise that we're making to the customer. So I think a brand is a promise. It's how we show up every time. It's the thing that is the mission of every person that serves a customer. And we want that to be consistent. And I usually say it, you smell it, you taste it, you feel it, like it always has to be the same. Where positioning is what we do for them. Like the and then they go hand in hand. So that's how I think of it. The last question, and I know I'm going over, I'm sorry. The methodology that they use to drive cross-functional alignment. Do you have tricks for, we used Miro. I know someone mentioned they're advising Miro. So we were definitely a Miro collaborator.
I don't have a like a tool or something that I use, but I think this is a room of incredible marketers, but sometimes it helps to bring somebody else in the room that can lend credibility even to you. And so as I've talked about positioning or talked about brand, I've been comfortable bringing in third parties to help bring that alignment, to make sure I'm not just hearing my own voice, and to not have ego about that, and embrace people like April who have done that, Carolou, whoever it is that you can find to make that investment in capturing that voice across your company, and make sure then you're presenting that back together.
Yeah, I know when I was doing this stuff back when I was an in-house marketer, it was hard. Even after I had a methodology, it was hard to get the team together and be the person that's facilitating the exercise and represent marketing at the same time. So that used to drive me crazy. And so I had a guy who was just a really good facilitator that would come in and be the person in the middle so that I could actually, defend marketing's point of view and represent marketing in there as a full player, as opposed to trying to do that and being the facilitator at the same time.
We used the COE from Insight because that was our facilitator. Yeah, Gary's kids. The good news is there's also a book. So April's book is outside for us. I want to thank April and Maria for being our awesome panel. I did ask permission to do one quick PSA. from Latney, and with the theme of women elevating women. It just so happened when I was packing, I found this shirt, and it says "Inspire, Empowerment, and Love," and I'm not going to get teary-eyed, but I might. But I want to ask Cindy Knezovich, aka CK. She has no idea I'm going to do this. To stand up for just 1 second. So CK is the woman elevating women in my world. So she's our head of brand and communication. She went through this amazing journey with us, and I'm just so happy you could be here. If you haven't met Cindy yet, please reach out.
That's so awesome.
She is my empowerment. So we all know to be empowered leaders, you need to be able to have people you can empower. So she is my woman behind the scenes that is my right hand, and I just am so grateful you're here.
Yay.